Hi, good morning, 7th grade. I am Mr. Rogers,
And I'm Mrs. Froman.
and this is the video lecture for 4-1 in your book. This is on human inheritance. And so we're still talking about genetics. We're more talking specifically about humans here first, and then also about animals, how we kind of control breeding and how we can manipulate DNA to kind of get it to what we want in some circumstances. So to get us started, we have the idea of multiple alleles. Remember, alleles are factors that control traits, what you're going to look like or what something looks like. And a lot of times, more than often than not, we have what are called multiple alleles. So 3 or more forms of a gene that code for a single trait. And one example is blood type. And I'll let Mrs. Froman try to make sense of our chart right down here.
Oh, yeah. Blood type's always kind of confusing.
Yeah.
The genotype is a lowercase I for type O blood.
Okay.
And that means your blood doesn't have any antigens, it doesn't react to anything, so it can, they're the universal donors. They can give blood to anybody.
I think I'm type O blood.
Are you?
Yeah.
I think I'm A. And then there's the capital I's, and that's if you do have antigens in your blood.
Okay.
And there's 2 kinds of antigens, so it just gets very complicated. Right. So we have the A antigens and the B antigens. So if you just have the A antigens, capital I with an A and capital I with an A, you're type A blood.
Okay.
Or if you just have one of those genes.
At least one of those capital A's.
Capital A's, and then you have the recessive type O, the little I, then you're still type A blood.
Okay. I think the big thing to look at here is, I think about, I can only have 2 of these, 2 I's.
Right.
But there's 1, 2, 3 or 4 different types.
Yeah.
Like that are out there.
Even so, there's that many forms of the gene, but you still only have 2 in your cells.
Okay.
So these are just the possible ones you can inherit from your parents.
Every organism can only carry 2 alleles for a trait, even though there's more of them out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked a little bit about this last chapter too, the idea of codominant alleles. And this comes in with blood type too. So both traits are expressed. And for blood type, they're shown with that superscript, kind of capital A or capital B. So I can have I can go back to this chart over here. I can have a capital A and a capital B. So I can have, that's that codominant.
Yeah, that's a really codominant, because then your AV blood, they're both being expressed.
And so some human traits with many phenotypes are controlled by groups of genes that act together to produce a single trait. And I always think about even like hair color, eye color.
Oh, yeah.
There's always there's no just one type of blue eye.
Right. I mean, we talk about brown and blue, but it's really much more complicated than that.
So it's that kind of group of genes. I think hair color too. You look in the classroom, there's every different shade of blonde or brown or black hair. So straight, curly. So there's a group of traits working together.
Right.
And then genes can be altered by the environment by things like diet, living conditions, and medical care. So you just look at average height of humans, I think, in the past couple hundred years.
Even the last 100 years.
100 years, yeah. I think I would be considered giant, a couple hundred years ago, even at 6'2".
Lincoln was like 6 feet or 6'1", and he was considered a giant at that time. So
I think Washington too was 6'4", and he was a he's a giant. So even just that's better medical care and better diet. So those 2 things right there. We'll skip over that. Do that in class. So we talk about our pairs of chromosomes. Remember, you have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and one of them controls whether you're a boy or a girl. And so this boy or girl chromosome also carries some diseases we'll talk about here in the future. So you have to understand that boys, you're an XY. So I have an XY chromosome pair for that one pair, and Mrs. Froman is XX. So that kind of determines if you're a boy or a girl. Now, beyond that, there's also some diseases we'll talk about that are carried on that X chromosome.
Yeah,
and
just genes in general.
And genes in general, and just different traits. But also talk about, genetically, girls are superior to boys because they have kind of the double X. They have kind of a backup.
Doubly protected.
That's right. Yeah. So we say this in kind of joking. So males are more likely to have these, gender-linked or sex-linked traits or gender traits. It's based on your gender. They're controlled by a recessive allele because they only have one X chromosome. So I have that one X chromosome. I'm not guarded against it. If I get one recessive, I can have that trait.
Right.
And so over here we have the idea of a carrier. From talking about carrier.
So a carrier is a person who has that recessive allele and one dominant allele for that trait.
Okay.
So generally, with a regular trait, that dominant allele is going to show up. And that. But in the sex-linked genes, if you're a male and you have a recessive trait on your X chromosome, you don't have another X chromosome.
gonna get
So
it.
you're gonna get that disease, yeah.
I think color blindness is a
So,
big one.
Yes,
that one.
that's a huge one. Color blindness and hemophilia.
So how do we track this? We can actually track these genetic traits and how they're passed on from generation to generation, and it's in the form of a pedigree. And a pedigree is a chart that tracks which family members have a particular trait. And it's pretty simple to use once you understand how it's all put together. So this would be a basic pedigree, and this one's for the free or attached earlobes. And so males are in the box form, girls are circles. And if they're connected like this, that means that'd be like a mating pair, like they're married. That'd be a pair right there.
Yep.
As you come down, this would be the offspring that come down off of there. So we can see here, this pair, we'll go with the second generation here, had 2 sons. You can see it connected to 2 sons. And from there, they married, had a girl, and that girl had the attached earlobes.
Yeah.
So one thing we're kind of missing, we kind of should add in, is the idea of a carrier. And if they're carrying the gene, that means they're kind of half filled in. They don't have it, but they're half filled in. So down here, some of these parents, like for sure, I think
should be a carrier.
She should be a carrier. So if I filled that in, I would probably put fill that in. Half filled in means that person is a carrier.
Right.
So on this chart, we're kind of missing, the male free, and if it's circled in, they have the attached earlobe. If it's half filled in, that means they're carrying that attached earlobe gene. So
yes, so then they can pass that on to their offspring.
So anytime we have the half filled, that means a carrier. So the big thing from this chart to look at, guys, is which ones are males, females, if they have the trait, and if they're a carrier, the half filled in one. I would definitely have that in your notes. So from there, guys, I think we're going to stop there today. How we use a pedigree. We thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys along the way.
Bye.